Hello, my friends. It's great to see you. Now, tonight we're going to be examining this photograph right here. It was posted upon Sargon's Warplan Purple Twitter handle, and I think it's one of the most interesting photographs of the 21st century. I think what we're seeing here is really a work of art. So, as we can see Sargon here addressing the crowd. As you can see, he's been working out. Um, he has probably less of a gunt than Ralph at the moment. Um, all right, let's just address the elephant in the room. He dresses like a woman trying to slim down. He dresses like an obese woman trying to hide their obesity by dressing all in black. Perhaps this is the only shirt he owns as well, because we see here that the creases of Sargon's shirt. This shirt hasn't been ironed or maintained very well. You can see it's well worn, in fact. And here we see, well, we can't quite see his shoes, but we can imagine they're scuffed as well. We can imagine Sargon only owns one item, one shirt. And these seem to be a relatively new addition because he usually wears black, but perhaps he feels slim enough now to wear lighter colors in terms of his trousers. So, as we can see, he's addressing an audience of, well, what is this audience? What's this audience made up of? It's made up of UKIP members, we could assume. We can see this lady here. This one here, she seems almost in awe of Sargon's speech, almost mesmerized by the words he's saying. This lady here, this one, seems almost surprised. She seems almost shocked to bear witness to what this fat chav is saying. She's almost thinking, why am I sat here listening to a fat chav talk about Kekistan? And these two old people, they look rather perplexed. You can see that she here is praying for some sort of divine entity to strike her down and terminate her life. This fellow here is intrigued. It's almost as though he's watching Countdown or trying to figure out the Times crossword. Who is this fellow that belongs on the internet that is so misproportioned almost, that is barely inched out over that lectern he's standing behind? This fellow here is probably the youngest person in this crowd, if you want to call it that. He's likely Sargon's fan. He's likely the one Kekistani remaining that hasn't quite strangled his own mother yet. You can see that he's brought his father. Perhaps it's his father, perhaps it's not. But his father doesn't seem too pleased with the man his son's been watching in his basement. And we move on now to another perplexed lady. She seems almost aghast. She seems to almost think that this isn't the Jam in Jerusalem of the WI. This isn't a man talking to us about Countryfile or gardening. No, he's saying some really violent right-wing rhetoric that needs to be stopped. I mean, how uncouth this man is to be talking about these Muslim rape gangs to this audience who seem to have emptied out from a charity shop. And this lady here, she is writing down either notes or her shopping list, or things to do when she leaves this room. I imagine she's incredibly bored, or she's incredibly engaged. You can picture either. But Sargon seems to be looking over. If we look at Sargon's eye line and we go across, he seems to be looking over at this sort of section in particular. And I don't know if it's just me. We've got another lady here who seems to be, I've zoomed out. We've got another lady here who seems to be sort of checking her phone or sleeping. But we've got a fellow here who is also perhaps a Kekistani, who seems to be part of Sargon's audience. I refuse to believe that this isn't, or that this is Sargon's audience. Perhaps it is. Perhaps this is what Gamergate has done to all of those edgy 23-year-olds that thought Anita Sarkeesian was evil. Perhaps this is what it's done. But I think that Sargon's addressing a UKIP meetup, and he's a fish out of water. But he seems to be addressing this area in particular, and I don't know why, because no one seems as interested or engaged, really, with the proceedings as these people here. Arguably, this fellow here, the Kekistani who hasn't strangled his mother and who's brought his father with him and seems to be having a pint of cause, or Foster's is that, he's the most entranced by Sargon's words. Here we have an old fellow gorming out at Sargon. He's either having some sort of stroke, or he's just completely lost the will to live. He's probably pondering why he sat there, why he's had this man who's talking about a frog, who's talking about the white N words, why he's sat there while this man is spewing this nonsense. As we move further into the photograph and we analyze it even further, we've got a fellow who looks like 2018 Tony Blair. We've got a few nondescript characters, a few skinheads in the background, probably some of Tommy's crowd that he's attracted. But if we look at the photograph just a second, you may notice here that there's a fellow, perhaps a Sargonite, perhaps a liberalist, the one left on the Titanic. There's a fellow here filming Sargon. His face very cannily hidden from view. He's almost gator-like in his avoidance of being doxxed. So if we zoom out and we really take in the full vantage of this Renaissance-like photograph, this could belong almost beside Da Vinci's Last Supper as a work of true art, next to Caravaggio's Beheading of Saint Jerome, as a work of Baroque nature. Now, I haven't quite addressed the purple bucket. There's a purple bucket in front of Sargon, in front of this lectern. You may not be able to see what it says, but trust me, if you zoom in further than I can possibly zoom in, you can see that it writes, that he's written upon it, he's scrawled upon it the word donations. Now, it begs the question, did Sargon arrive with this bucket? Did he buy the bucket at the venue and then write this label? Was this a pre-prepared thing, or did he in fact bring a bucket with him on the train, a purple bucket that read donations, for the sole purpose of milking these aging pay piggies, these potential pay piggies who've got no idea who he is, bar the odd one or two? They have no idea who. They're perplexed by him. He's a man from the internet. He's a man who's trying to hide his obesity by wearing a creased black shirt. But Sargon, ever the enterprising capitalist, he decides to bring a bucket to collect those shekels. I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.